And welcome back to my YouTube channel, Simply Queen by Sherelle. That's me, the modern day seamstress. I hope that you will enjoy this sew-along tutorial featuring Simplicity 8749. It is a MiMi G style, the classic pantsuit. Enjoy and keep watching. Thank you. Today we're going to get started on our next project, which is going to be Simplicity 8749, and it is a MiMi G style make. And this will be a sew-along. This is a two-piece pantsuit, but the jacket can actually be considered a coat if you do the really long version, or the shorter version is more of a blazer jacket. When you get your pattern, you want to take a look at the back, because the next thing you want to consider is what type of fabric that you want to use. And on just about all pattern packets, they give you a suggested list of fabrics. And the suggested fabrics that they recommend for this pattern are gabardines, pontes, stretch wovens, wool types. That's for the pants. And then for the jackets, they also recommend tweed. And you will always need extra fabric if you're working with plaids or stripes or any type of directional fabric. You're going to need extra fabric to line up the lines or pattern designs. Next, I want to figure out what size is closest to my measurements to cut. For the coat, I am going to go with the bust measurement, because my bust measurement is larger than your waist. And you always want to go with, when you're making tops, blouses, coats, sweaters, you're going to want to go with your bust measurement if it is larger than your waist measurement. But if your waist measurement is larger than your bust measurement, then you're going to want to go with your waist measurement, because, you know, when you put your shirt on, if it fits in the bust area but doesn't fit in the waist area, well, it's probably not going to fit. So for me, I'm in between, I'm a 39, so I'm in between the 38 and 40. A 38 is a size 16 and a 40 is a size 18. So I already know that I'm going to cut a size 18 because I'm right in the middle, and I'd rather have too much than to cut it small and not have enough. But that is not going to be my determining fact. That's not going to be the determining fact in which size I cut. On your pattern pieces, they will have the finished garment sizes, and that is really what you want to look at when you're looking at your patterns. That information is almost always on the back of the pattern packet as well, and it's usually below where they talk about the yardage that will be required for whatever size you're going to cut. So if I am looking at the size 18 and I follow that all the way down to where it says finished garment measurements, it tells me that the finished bust area for the size 18 is 44 inches. So I'm going to, and that's going to be more than enough room for me in the top area for a coat. So I'm cutting, I'm around a 39. I am a 39. I fluctuate between 38 and 39. Right now I'm currently a 39. So I'm going to cut an 18, which is a 40, but the finished garment measurements on a 40 is 44. So if I'm at a 39, that's giving me almost 5 inches of wiggle room, which I like. I also have broad shoulders, so I always have to take that into consideration, because I almost always have to do a shoulder adjustment for my top pieces. and my shoulders are slightly rounded forward. So oftentimes if I try to cut my pattern pieces as is out of the packet, a lot of times my tops will pull in this region here, and it'll be very uncomfortable. It may not look all that different, but it will be very uncomfortable. So I almost always have to do a shoulder adjustment. So knowing that, one, I have broad shoulders and my shoulders round to the front a little bit, I definitely would want that extra room in this area. So an 18 is probably going to be a very safe bet for me. Okay. Now, for the size 18, it tells me for view C, which is the shorter coat, I am going to need 2 7/8 of yardage in fabric, and I'm going to need 2 1/8 in lining fabrics. And I will also need a little bit of interfacing. And you want to open up your pattern and take a look at the instruction sheet and make sure that you pay attention to the general directions. If you've been sewing for a while, yes, you know that it says a lot of the same stuff on every pattern instruction. However, some patterns will have some information specific to the garment that you are going to be making. So just looking at this at first glance, because I'm very familiar with Simplicity patterns, everything is pretty, general. So the next thing I want to do is look at the garment that I am planning to make. And the first one we're going to start with is the coat. I'm going to start with the coat first. And that is on the rear of the rear of sheet 1. We're going to look at the pattern layout. So all patterns will give you a suggestion on how to lay out your pattern pieces on your fabric so that you're maximizing your yardage, so that you're not wasting fabric. I, for the most part, do follow the guide, and then sometimes I do not, because sometimes I'm working with yardage that's already cut into maybe 1 or 2 yard increments, and so I know how to move around the pattern pieces to make everything work. The most important thing is you have to pay attention to the grain line, the grain arrow on the pattern pieces. And remember, your grain line arrow tells you which direction the pattern piece has to be placed on your fabric. And so when you're laying your fabric out, most patterns, you're cutting out your pattern pieces on the wrong side of the fabric, folded, salvage edge to salvage edge, and you lay your pattern pieces out along the grain line of the fabric, and your grain is going to run parallel to your salvage edge. Okay, that's just a refresher if you're sewing, and if you're going to be making this coat, you know these things. So that's just a refresher tidbit there. Oh, and then that's one other thing, one other reason why you want to look at the pattern instructions, because sometimes the patterns companies will have you cut out your fabric on the right side of the fabric. And if you're doing that, then you have to pay attention, because if you're cutting out 2 of one pattern piece, but you're cutting everything on the right side of the fabric, then you should know that you're going to cut one piece with the pattern face up, and you're going to cut the other piece with the pattern flipped around to the back side. And again, if you're sewing this blazer / coat pants with a fly zip waistband, then you probably know these things. Again, that's just a refresher tidbit. This pattern here is definitely more towards someone who has been sewing for a while and does have a working knowledge of the sewing terminology. If you are a beginner, I do not recommend this project for you. One, as I said, it has a fly zipper waistband. It has welt pockets. The jacket is lined, so you're going to be turning, fabric inside out, which is called bagging. This is not a project for a beginner. You should still probably watch it, and it's something to move towards, but the skill sets that will be needed for this is a little bit beyond a beginner level. Okay, step one is we need to prepare our flaps for our welt pockets. For the flap, we needed to cut 4 pieces of the fabric and 2 pieces for the interfacing. So I've already cut my 4 pieces, and I'm not going to use an interfacing because this fabric already has a substantial weight, and welt pockets, you're trying to fit a lot of fabric into a very, very narrow space. So I chosen not to apply interfacing to my pocket flaps. And for the actual welts for the pockets, we needed to cut 2 of these and then 2 interfacing pieces. And again, I chose not to apply the interfacing because my fabric is pretty thick, and adding interfacing to the flap and the welt would make it just too thick. And then we needed to cut 4 pieces of the actual pocket, and I've already cut those. I've decided to use a different fabric, a crepeback satin fabric for the pockets, and I'm also going to use a little bit of this on the front lapel facing for the coat, and it will also be the lining. And so I've already put my markings on the pocket pieces, and we're going to go ahead and prepare these now. So the first thing we have to do for the flap is we need to put right sides together, and then we need to stitch 3/8 of an inch around on 3 sides, and we're going to leave the top edge, we're going to leave that unfinished for the moment. So we will take this to the machine and stitch in 3/8 of an inch for the pocket flaps. Okay, and then for the welts, we are to put wrong sides together. So this is the right side and this is the wrong side. We want to put the wrong sides together, and we want to stitch 3/8 of an inch along the raw edges. Okay, so we're going to put a few pins in there, and yes, I do use pins, a lot of pins, because I like for my things to be I don't like to fuss with things when I get to the sewing machine. So we have 2 of those because we have 2 pockets. Go ahead and put a few pins in those. Okay. All right, so we're going to take these to the machine.
For something better. Is this what you want now? Or is it because you can't forget her?
welt piece and our pocket flaps all stitched and pressed. And so now it's time to attach them to our coat. Now, this is the hardest part of the whole coat. Once you get this done, you're in, you know, home stretch. This is the hardest part. Welt pockets, if you mess it up, you can just pretty much throw the whole thing away, because as you will see, we're going to cut a hole in our fashion fabric in making this welt pocket. So you really need to try and get it right. So the holes, the markings on my welt pockets, on the welt piece, because this fabric is dark and it's not, you know, a lot of room to make an X, what I have done, and I do this sometimes, is I go ahead and fold the pattern piece to mimic the actual fabric, and then I just put pins where my markings are supposed to be. So you take one of your welt pieces and you have to line the dots up, and for me it's going to be my pins. We have to line those up with the two bottom dots on the bottom part of your welt layout on your pocket. Okay, and so I am going to actually do it this way because I don't want to. I'm going to put it through here, and then I'm going to take this one out and I'm going to put the pin there. Press it down and pin it. I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. Take that pin out, and then I'm going to put that right on the dot, and I am going to pin it in place. Okay, so I've got that pinned in place. Now, what I should have done before I came over here is I needed to trim down where I stitched across the top of the welt. So I'm going to trim that down. Okay. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the machine and I'm going to base this onto the fabric. I'm going to base it, do a basting stitch, and then I am going to take one of my pocket flaps. I'm going to line those dots up on the top piece here. Okay, just like that. You're going to line your dots up the same way, the same dots that are on here. I'll do the same thing with my pen, and I'm going to base stitch that. Okay, all right. So I'm going to go to the machine and stitch that, and then we're going to move on to the next step. Okay, I've base stitched the welt piece down as well as the flap. And the next thing we need to do is we need to take one of our pocket pieces in which we have put the these markings on. Same thing, we've got 4 markings, 4 dots, and we're going to line those up with the 4 dots that is on our fashion fabric to stitch this box right on here with a regular stitch. And you want to start in the middle and then go this way, then back around, and then close it up, or if you want to go the other way. But either way you go, start in the middle on the bottom. Okay, and I'll be back. I've stitched my box on. Now what we have to do is we're going to find the center, okay, which is half of here. And this is the scary part, because we're going to cut into and through all the layers right down the center to about the halfway point on each side. Okay, so just take your time. close your blade up. Now, you see that? We now have a hole in our garment. All right. So then, where we stopped at the halfway point, we have to cut a diagonal cut to the corner of that stitch without going through it. And the same thing in the opposite corner. And just take your time, because you don't want to cut through the stitch so that it looks like this. And you want to do the same thing to the other side. We're going to go diagonal. Just go slow. Uh-oh, I actually went through my fabric. Okay. You can't see the hole. And then go diagonal to the other corner. Okay. And so that it looks like that. Now we are going to flip everything inside out. So take your pocket piece and tuck it through the hole. Okay. Tuck it through the hole. And this is where you just have to kind of do a little bit of wiggling until you get everything tucked in, and you see the welt pocket piece that's coming up, starting to take form. And then you want to take this piece here of the lining, and that gets tucked in. Okay. And then we want to flip it over. Okay. Now, those two corners that we did the diagonal cuts, we want to pull those through. We want to pull that through to here. And what I'm going to do temporarily is I am going to put a small pin there, and I'm going to be careful because I always stick myself when I do that. And then the same thing for the other diagonal piece from the welt. I'm going to pull that through there, okay? And I'm temporarily going to pin that because we are going to press this flat. Now, if you use wool fabric, this is a challenge. So I have this pattern cut out right now in a navy blue wool. I have literally put it aside because trying to get this flipped around and pressed flat is almost impossible. So I got frustrated and I put it aside. So I'm going to pin all this down, and then I'm going to pull it through on the other side. Pull that diagonal cut piece of fabric out, and I'm going to pin it to help me when I press it down to try and get it as flat as possible. Okay, so. And there's no real easy way of doing this. It just really depends on the fabric that you're using. So, you know, what I will probably end up doing with the navy blue wool coat that I've cut is I will probably make those faux welt pockets. So the welt will be there, but I'm just going to make it a faux pocket because it's just way too much. The wool is very, very heavy. It's a heavy wool. It's not a wool blend. It's a really heavy wool. So, okay. So I have this pinned down to help me when I'm pressing. And these are glass pins, so I can press right over top of those. Okay. I'm going to press all this down and flip it back around. So you can see that I didn't pull that through. I have to pull that through. That has to be on the outside here. Okay. So, alright. So I'm going to go over and start pressing it to help it lay flat. Okay. And I will use a press cloth with this. Okay, so I'll be back. Okay, so when you get everything all pressed down, you want to take your second pocket piece and you want to line it up, and you're going to stitch it down. I have finished the welt pockets on both pieces, okay, and I am about to move on, thank goodness, to the next section, because these welt pockets was way too much. And then that's the back side with the pocket bag attached. Okay, so we're going to work on the next section. Okay, we have our pockets in place on both front pieces, and now we are going to move on and stitch the back pieces together. We're going to stay stitch around the collar, and then we're going to stitch the back seam straight down using 5/8 of an inch, and then we are going to attach the front to the back at the shoulder and side seams. So we'll do that now, and we'll be right back. My back has been stitched, seam has been pressed open, stay stitch in place, and now we're going to stitch the front to the back at the seams and at the sides, and we're going to press open our seam. My front has been attached to the back at the shoulders and at the sides, and my seams have been pressed open, and we are ready to move on to the next step. I will not be finishing my seams in this piece because it's going to be fully enclosed with a lining, so there's no need for me to finish off my edges. Okay, so we'll move on to the next step. Before you stitch the front to the back at the shoulders, you need to do a stay stitch at this dart, and you come down to the first shoulder dart dot and then in about 1/2 inch, and then you want to clip from this corner right up to but not through the stay stitch. Do that on both sides before you stitch the garment together at the shoulders. I forgot, so I'm actually catching it after the fact, but it's okay. All right, so take care of that, and then we'll move on. Okay, we are now ready to attach the undercollar, which is piece 17, to our jacket. So we're going to match up our center notches. We're going to match up our center notches first. I'm sorry, we're just going to put that there just to keep it in place. But the first part we're going to work on is the lapel piece, and I had to undo this because I originally just flipped it and did it backwards. So we're going to match up these two dots. And then using a 5/8 of an inch, we're going to stitch between this dot and that dot, 5/8 of an inch, and then we're going to press the seam open. Do that for both the right and the left. Okay, we have that pressed open, that seam pressed open on both sides. Now we are ready to match up our center back notches and the side seam notch. Then this dart that we drew in or marked at the start, it's now time for us to go ahead and pin that in place, because when we stitch the remaining under collar to the jacket, we're going to stitch through the dart in one continuous stitch. Okay, we're going to check. I use the pin through method to check my dart. There is a yellow line there. You can barely see it, but it's there. Okay, that's in place. Okay, now we're going to match up. Remember here where we clipped? That's why we needed to clip that. We're going to pinch the seam open, line our edges up, and I will put a pin there. Okay, and I'm going to fold this seam allowance over, which hits right at the start of that dart. Okay, and I'll put an extra pin here. Okay, and so when we stitch the under collar down, we're going to make one continuous 5/8 of a seam and then sew off the dart as you usually would and tie it off. And we're going to do the same thing to the other side. Match up my side seam dot. Okay. Alright, and I already have the dart pinned on this side. In fact, I need to draw it in so that I can see it. And this is a fabric pin. Okay, I have my seam pressed flat where we notched at earlier. This is why, so that when we make that stitch, everything will lay nice and flat. So I'm going to start my stitch in the center back, do one side, come back to the center back, do the other side, and then we're going to press the collar open. We're going to trim it and press it. I'll be back. Once you have made the stitch from center through your dart, tie it off, clip your curve with small clips, and then press that seam out nice and flat. Double check that you have no puckers. Okay, there's the under collar seam, no puckers, shoulder seam, no puckers, no puckers. The center back, goodness, I almost didn't see the center back. My pieces line up absolutely perfect. And that's what you want to shoot for when you're working with fabric that has a pattern. And here's the other side seam, no puckers. And then there's the under collar stitching. I'll go in and clip out those. There we go. All right, now we're going to set this aside and we're going to start working on the sleeve. All right, let's get our sleeve pieces. We have the undersleeve and we have the upper sleeve. I am going to remove my pattern pieces. I've already transferred my notches, and remember I added 2 inches to my sleeve, so I had to add the 2 inches to both upper and under sleeve parts. The first thing we need to do is we need to add ease stitching from, I go from notch to notch. Okay, I have my ease stitches in, And now I'm going to pin my upper and under shoulder pieces together. So on, we want to match up our notches. So on piece number 19, which is the undersleeve, has 2 notches, and with right sides facing, I'm going to match it up to my upper sleeve piece that has 2 notches, which is right there, and then my 2 notches is here. So I'm going to match those up. So I have my notches matched up, but as you can see, there's a little bit of ease there. You have to work that in because that's going to give you proper movement for your elbow. So what I do is I take about half of that ease and I'll pin it, and then I'll just work the ease in that way. Okay, pinch it, pin it, take half of that, pinch it. Okay, we're going to attach the back facing to the front facing, right sides together, matching up our notches, and it's a perfect match. So if you've cut your pieces out nice and even, they'll match up just fine. There's no easing whatsoever. Just remember, right sides together. And then this is the front of the facing. This is the part that's going to attach to the inside front pieces. Okay, pin those. All right, then we're going to stitch with a 5/8 of an inch, and then we're going to press open the seams, and then we will attach the upper collar, which is piece 16, the same way that we attached our under collar to the actual coat. Okay, we have our front and back lining pieces stitched together at the back seam, side seam, shoulder seam, and all of the seams have been pressed open. After you attach the front and back lining pieces together, go ahead and stitch in a narrow hem at this point. Okay, so what I did was I serged the end of the raw edge, and then I just folded over 1/4 of an inch, stitched in the line, and pressed it. We also have completed our front facing pieces. We have the 2 front facing pieces and the back facing. We are now going to attach our facing to our lining pieces. So with right sides together, match up all of your seams or notches. Okay, so we have our lining with our sleeves attached and our front facing attached. So we have the lining and the jacket. Oh, wow. I forgot I got to put the sleeves on the jacket. So I will be back after I get the sleeves on my jacket.
Is this what you want now? Feels like you're looking for something better. Is this what you want now? Or is it because you can't forget her? I can't keep pretending it's not getting to me. It's never ending. Can't give you what you need.
Now we have our sleeves attached to our jacket. Okay. And now we're ready to pin the lining to our jacket. Okay, so we want right sides facing, and we are just going to line up our notches, pin it all the way around, and stitch 5/8 of an inch. I went ahead and serged the bottom of my coat, folded up just past an inch. It's just below the lining. Okay, and then I pinned it, and I'm going to do a blind hem on the actual coat. And then the last thing that we need to do is we need to finish off our sleeve so that we can have a clean finish like that. I haven't pressed it yet. I just finished it, so I just need to press it. But I'm going to show you how you achieve this finished look. So what you want to do is make sure your sleeve is your lining is in your coat properly. Okay, so let's make sure it's all lined up. Okay, and so we have two raw edges. We have the raw edges of our fashion fabric, and we have the raw edge of our lining. So now we are going to go in and match up. We're going to go in and match up at least one of our seams. Okay. All right. So we're just right now we're just going to make sure that it's in the coat. It's in the coat properly first. So let's check. So let's match our seams up like this first. Okay. So now let's check it to make sure that it's not twisted around, meaning the seams aren't matched up with the right seam. So let's do that first. Something's going on with this. Okay, there it is. Okay, so my hands through there fine. My seams are matched up right. Okay. Take it back off, and then take one of the seams. Okay, take your pin out. Tuck it in like that, maybe about a 1/2 inch. Fold it over, and then fold over the lining, and then match your seams up. Okay, pin it. Take the other pin out, and now reach on the inside and pull your sleeves inside out. Okay, so we're going to pull the sleeves inside out, and it looks like this. Let's keep the body straight. Okay, so now it looks like this, and you're going to have to probably do this a couple times before you can master it. We want to make sure we don't get anything turned around. Okay, so now the seam that we matched up and put together, we're going to unpin it but hold it. Okay, undo your fold, and then take your lining fabric, hold it like that, and flip it over so that it's right sides to right sides on the seam, and then pin it. So you're just flipping it so that they're right side to right side, because when you pinned it before you turned it on the inside, turned it on the outside, they were wrong sides together. Okay, so now it looks like this. Right sides to right side. Okay, so now it looks like that. Okay, that's one seam. Flip it over to the other seam and do the same thing. The right seam for the fashion fabric and the right side of the fabric for your lining, and match the seams up and pin it. Now go ahead and pin the rest of the armhole. Okay. Gently flip to the other side and finish pinning it. Okay. Now take it to the machine and you want to put a 5/8 of an inch seam around it and then flip everything out and press it. And then you're done. You just have to go back and finish your hem, give everything a nice press or steam, and put your one button on. It has 1/7/8 of an inch button. Put that on and you are done. You're ready to move on and make your trousers.